Hey guys, it's Rachel here. I wanted to do a bit of a vlog, sort of recapping over the last 5 weeks and how it's gone, how I'm doing now, and sort of how the challenges have changed as the weeks have gone on. So this all started for me on the 18th of November when things had literally reached rock bottom, like the bottom of the pits. And while I'd sort of increased what I was eating, I hadn't really changed my restricting patterns. So I was still only eating like select foods that I'd allow myself. And I'll go into a bit more detail on my eating disorder and how it progressed over the 10 years, because obviously I was at a healthy weight for quite a while. And obviously how it all kind of went a bit downhill this year in another video. But yeah, so 18th of November, I just decided that evening, after a chat with my friend Jasmine, that the next day I was just going to go all in and eat the foods that I hadn't eaten in forever to get this weight back on. So I started off by just eating, because for the first week, the biggest challenge was the fact that I felt so guilty for everything I ate. I was so worried that I was instantly just going to gain weight from tiny little foods. And so I was eating pizzas and brownies and the weight was just not going on. It was quite weird actually. And in that first week, I completely cut out all forms of exercise because I knew my body just needed a complete reset, and it did. It completely needed that cold turkey effect. So the first week was really hard, and every single thing I ate, I felt so guilty. It was just unreal, because this is something I haven't let myself do for 10 years, like being completely honest. So it was really hard. And that was week one, and week one was gone. I'd seen no change in my body, and it was kind of bizarre, but you know, I was like, I'm obviously doing the right thing here. So the next week, I kind of increased it a little bit more because I decided to start doing some light exercise, because the one thing I will say is where I was literally doing nothing, mentally I was not in a good place. So I think you've got to find that balance. And some people say no exercise, some people say a tiny walk, and I think that depends on how you are as a person, and you've also got to be coping at the same time. So week two was hard again, and it was very up and down. And then in week three, I think I just decided that the weight still wasn't going on. So something wasn't right. So it was time for another increase. And that was kind of, I think, where I'd started to see all my energy come back as well. So I was literally living the dream. I had this massive spike in energy. I had the energy to do all the things that I love doing, and I had to be really careful at that point not to go, oh, well, I might as well just go back to training now because I'm feeling really good. So obviously this massive spike in energy, I'm obviously eating all the time. So the energies come from the fact that I'm effectively fueling a long endurance session while I'm not doing anything. And it's quite scary actually to think that your body is literally just living off of the carbs because it's got no reserves. So I think that was obviously, it's a nice place to be because I was feeling a lot more positive and like the journey was going the right direction. But I was definitely still panicking over having an extra snack or extra something at breakfast. And it was kind of like, almost I wasn't giving myself the justification to eat it, but I'd made such mental gains by week three that it was getting easier, and I knew what I was doing. I knew why I'm doing it, and I still don't want to live like this. This isn't a fun way of living. So moving on to week four, and again, quite up and down. And I actually roughly ballpark added up what I was having in a day, and it absolutely terrified me. And I decided that if I had been eating that for weeks, probably 2 weeks, and I'd seen no change in my weight or my body, it obviously wasn't enough. So what I did, took that figure, because this was a particularly big day of eating, and I just rounded it up to the nearest 1,000. And I had that from that day on as my minimum. So while I don't weigh now, I do ballpark measure to make sure I'm hitting that minimum calorie goal. Now, I don't track macros, anything like that. Whatever my body fancies, I eat. And surprise, surprise, it's not actually brownies and cakes all the time, because they make you feel sick if you have too many. So for me, it's just been about eating a big variety of foods, obviously a lot of carbs at dinner, reincorporating all the fear foods that I am scared of. So going out and having cake on your own, big thing. and going out and buying a cheese and ham toastie that you wouldn't have touched and having a pizza a week. These are all massive things for me that I just need to normalise in my own head. So since then, it was kind of okay for about a week, but then my body just entered this phase of extreme hunger. Now, I briefly touched on something called hypermetabolism the other week, which is where basically your metabolism, after being so low for so long, just suddenly speeds up and up and up and up and up. And it's almost like your belly, your physical belly, can't keep up with your mind. And this is where extreme hunger comes in. I had a particularly bad day with it yesterday, on the day I drove back to Southampton, and effectively nothing I could eat would satisfy my head. Like, I was constantly looking for the next thing, and it's super challenging and it's very distressing. So for example, yesterday I probably got in about 4,000 calories. Now, considering it was a complete day of rest, as you can imagine, it's quite distressing. Like, even as a normal person that doesn't obsess over what they're eating, that's a lot of food. And to make it worse, your body can't keep up. So my digestion is all over the place. I'm not as regular as I once was. And it's really hard because your belly is just constantly bloated. Now, this period of extreme hunger definitely started, I think, about 3 days ago. So it's been going on for quite a while now, and mentally it's really hard. I was actually thinking this morning, physically, I've still got all my energy. Like, I could go and run for ages now, as long as I took a gel with me, because I'm, regular fueling and all that. But physically I've got the energy. Mentally, I'm really tired because I'm finding the whole experience quite distressing. And I think as well, there's been quite a few tears. I wouldn't say I'm feeling down, but I am finding it really hard. And so there's been quite a few tears, which is tiring anyway, but I think where my mind is just so focused on healing my body, it's so hard at the moment. And I just don't know when it's going to end, because the thing with extreme hunger, there's no time scale on this. Like, your body is healing itself. It's healing all the damage you've done for the last, well, for me, 6 or 7 months. So I have to respect that I kind of got myself into this situation where I am right now, and it's going to take a little while to get out again. And some days it's easier than others to accept that. Some days I'm just literally like, why isn't this fixed yet? It's been 5 weeks. And that's what's really hard. So I think it's actually really interesting to kind of roughly track it, because you can kind of look day on day at your like hunger levels and how much you've moved. And I think one positive for me that does come out of this, that means my hunger cues are coming back, like, properly. So it's so much easier to eat when you are hungry, if that makes sense. So while physically I might not be hungry, mentally, because my brain wants food, it's so much easier to eat it. And yeah, so I think that's probably where I am at the moment. I think one thing I do need to do is properly write down all the major wins that I've had. So for example, on Sunday last week, I went around Jasmine's house and we had pizza together, and I wouldn't have been able to do that for the last 10 years because I was very select on the foods that I'd eat. This year particularly, I got into having the same things every single day, even for dinner. Like, I would not deviate. So that's a massive win for me. Obviously, I've got a lot more energy now, and I'm not having panic attacks or anxiety anywhere near as often. It's often just like, I think I had some the other night, the first day of extreme hunger, but that was the first time in about 10 days. So that was a massive win. And I'm not cold all the time anymore. In fact, it's actually quite annoying sometimes because I'm really hot all the time. And also at night, I do tend to get quite bad night sweats now, which is kind of almost funny compared to where I've come from, where I've been cold all the time, to now I'm just like this really hot person who doesn't need a coat outside. So yeah, that's obviously another massive win. There are still a lot of things to get back properly, like to have some actual reserves again are going to be so nice, because at the moment I literally can't leave the house with about 10 snacks just in case that I need to eat. And it's just going to be nice to be back in tune with my body. Obviously, I cannot wait to start getting out for some longer runs and bike rides. Like, that is so high up my list of motivation now. I didn't think it would be because I wasn't enjoying it this year, but I think I've realised the reason I wasn't enjoying it was because I had no energy. And when you actually look at it, it kind of makes a lot of sense. So yeah, really looking forward to that. And I think The thing that I do have to say is obviously this is the best time of year for this to happen. Like, it's dark all the time, it's wet, it's cold, especially in Manchester. So yeah, that's a massive thing. And I think the other big thing for me as well, Mum came up and we went out for dinner, and I wouldn't have been able to eat like that previously because I had a starter, had a main, and I had a dessert. And then we just sat there and talked for an hour afterwards, and it was just so nice. Like, I wouldn't have been able to do that before because I'd have been really tired. I'd have probably have had to go home to eat the safe snack I was allowed, which would have been carrots, by the way. And I just wouldn't have had the energy, and I would have been sat there the whole night staring at the kitchen door. And I didn't do any of that because I wasn't so hungry that I couldn't cope. So I think there's just been some real big wins, and yeah, there's so much to get better for. I'm just frustrated how long it's taking. I think that's what I'd say. So yeah, it's been very, very up and down. And while I sound quite positive now, there have been so many tears. In fact, yesterday there were a lot of tears. And I am missing being me. I think that's what I'd say. I'm in this place where I can't really do a lot of the things that I like doing, even just going out for walks, because I've got to be careful, because if I just spend all my time outside walking, it's amazing how much energy you burn without realising. And that has been my big outtake. So yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. And I'm glad I made the decision. And I think the way I'm going to look at it, what are we now, on the 24th of December? There's another week until New Year. And when I look at how much progress I make week on week, if I keep going, who knows? By New Year, I could be in a completely different place. And I think the other positive, I don't want to talk weights, obviously, but I've seen a definite weight gain now, which is absolutely terrifying, but also like such a massive relief, because I was just literally like, oh my goodness, I'm not sure how much more I can eat. So yeah, I'm on the right track now, and I've just got to, where I can, keep positive and remember why I'm doing this. And I always think having a goal is the key. I spoke about this a lot when I was like triathlon training. Like, if you don't have a goal, why are you doing what you're doing? What gives you that motivation to get out and do it? So I think one other thing that I'd just like to touch on before I sign off is, obviously I've made this very, very public, and I've been very lucky because I haven't had that many negative comments on my posts. And the main reason I've done this is, firstly, I want to show that it is possible to recover, and that kind of gives me a lot of motivation as well. So on the days that I'm struggling, like knowing that I'm sharing my journey and there's a chance that I'm inspiring somebody else, that has been massive for me. I think the other thing as well, I've had quite a few people reach out to me and say that they are going through something similar, or I've made them realise that they potentially might have an issue. And raising awareness is so important for me, especially when you've got an account that big. I feel like you've got this opportunity to use it for something good, and I think I'm doing that. And then thirdly, I think it's just the amount of people that have reached out to me and offered me support. And there are probably about 2 or 3 people that in particular that have really influenced the last probably 3 or 4 weeks, and almost completely changed the game for me by like going, yeah, you should have some chocolate buns tonight. And I'd be like, well, I can't. And they'd be like, well, why not? And then I sit there and I'm like, I can have chocolate buns. That's what's great. Like, there is no one stopping me having an extra pack of chocolate buttons because it's free. Like, no one's stopping you. It's genuinely just you stopping you. And I just think, yeah. So it's been an experience, and I hope that I'm probably not nearing the end, but I'm nearing the end of the bit that I'm going through, because it is really distressing. But the thing I've learned, you can't speed it up. And that's what's done me in most of this, is that I'm sat there and going, well, I should be better now. And I just don't think you can undo 8 months worth of damage in 5 weeks. And that right there, my friends, is what I've learned.